Hi everyone, I hope you can hear me okay. So I'm going to start with my lesson objective. This is for a 4-year-old group, so preschoolers, and it's going to revolve around manipulating shapes. So my lesson objective is students will manipulate various shapes to create replicas of real-life animals and will write a sentence about the animal they made utilizing at least one shape and its placement for the animal. Students will also engage in active listening and speaking skills when they're presenting their animals and their sentences at the end of the lesson. So I would start the lesson by reading a Let's Go to the Zoo book, which shows a lot of different animals for students to choose from. And I really want to know if students can look at an animal and find shapes. So for example, like an elephant, we could say is a circular shape, the head of an elephant, I'm sorry. So in the text from Camp, it says, knowing what children within a given age range are generally capable of and how they learn provides the teacher with a starting point for planning and organizing a program. So ideally, what I would want them to know is the basic shapes. So a circle, a triangle, a square, a heart, an oval, a rectangle. So I would go through the book and I would have them find shapes within different animals and just make sure I can activate that prior knowledge for them and before I continue with the lesson, because the whole lesson is about utilizing the shapes in appropriate ways. So I will also ask the students, just for more engagement, if they have ever made anything on their own at home that is a real life object. So I would ask, has anyone ever made a house out of building blocks, or has anyone ever drew a car? These are real life things that you are drawing. You're using your imagination to now create something in your own way. So the whole goal of this is to use shapes to connect to real life. So we're manipulating shapes and their attributes to make real life animals, and then for the future to make real life objects. So we're making that kind of connection. So the first thing I would do for the tasks, after reviewing the various shapes, I would then model. So I'm sorry, I'm just getting to the text. So also in the text from Camp, it says that an effective way of teaching is when teachers portray positive social skills and self-regulations. Teachers model language, repeating and extending children's verbal responses, describing their own and children's actions, and using advanced vocabulary. So I would show them what I made, which is a cat. I would then emphasize that this is supposed to be a replica of a real life image. So I want to model that I created something that is a real life replica. I want them to learn, the whole point of this is to learn where we can make real life connections by using shapes. So I would ask them, what did I choose for my cat's face? A circle. What did I choose for the ears? Triangles. I want to also ask them some critical thinking questions like, why would I choose triangles for my ears instead of stars? What makes more sense? And try and get them thinking a little bit more about that. So for step 2, so after students view this, I want students to head back to their seats and they can begin doing this on their own with their own shapes. So for this part, this will be my documentation assessment, and I would like to have a student's name. I'll be walking around and asking the students checking off if the students can speak about appropriate shape selection for their animal to make their animal mimic a real life animal. Uses the words real life. So I want to make sure that the students are understanding that the goal of this is to create a real life animal. So if they can explain to me why they're choosing the shapes that they are, and they can say real life, that's a check. They're getting the goal of the lesson. Then the next column is the students can think critically about why they did not select certain shapes. such as me asking a question, why did you choose a triangle for your ears instead of a star? I want the students to be able to explain why they didn't choose something, because it's more critical thinking. And then the last column is challenges students face during independent work. So as an example, I wrote Sienna. She was able to explain her shape selection. She was not able to think critically. And why? What was the challenge? Because she said, I chose triangles because I like them more. So that's not the reason. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for because triangles look like a real cat ears and hearts or stars do not. So that's what the answer that I'm looking for is. So once they are completed with making their animal, they are then going to write a sentence, which I'm sorry, I would have shown them the way that I wanted them to write a sentence in the beginning, and I forgot to mention that to you. I'm sorry. So I would have modeled that. But they're going to have a sheet like this, and I want them to include just one shape that they made for one body part. So, for example, my cat has triangle ears. They would then take their cat, glue it on right here like this, and now they're ready to present. So, for the assessment part, I really want to be able to assess students listening and speaking about what they created, but with the target, with the objective of the lesson. So using real life as their vocabulary word and using shapes and their attributes and body parts to explain why they created what they did. So again, in Bredekamp, the text, it says that assessment is the ongoing process of gathering evidence of children's learning and development, and then organizing and interpreting the information to make informed decisions about instructional practice. So for the assessment, I would actually be doing the same exact documentation because I want to see if the information that I gave the students during the informal assessment, or the documentation rather, I was error correcting. So if a student said, I chose triangles instead of stars because I like triangles better, at that point during the informal documentation, I would be asking, or rather guiding, to change their learning up, to just say, well, I want to know why you chose triangles. What would triangles make it seem more real life than choosing a star for an ear? And then maybe I would show them a visual or a picture of a cat in real life, and then maybe I can guide a new response that's more appropriate to the learning objective. So with this, I then want to see and use the same tool for the assessment if they are able to speak about this during their, assessment portion. So the goal for this would be that I would be filling out the sheet during the speaking and listening portion and seeing if they can answer peers' questions, my questions in the same way that I want them to. So if they're critically thinking, I'll be asking them during their presentations, why did you choose rectangles for legs instead of hearts for legs of your animal? And just checking off that. So if there is any challenges that they're having during the speaking and listening portion, then we will do further instruction after that, maybe some enrichment, having them create different objects in the environment, such as maybe they can go back to their seats and build a house, and then we can identify the shapes that they use to build a house. Or they can draw a flower and identify the shapes that they use to draw a flower to make that real life connection. Thanks.